Hello guys, I'm Savvy and welcome back to another Kerbal Space Program tutorial video. In this video, I'm going to be showing you guys how to get into orbit around Kerbin. Now I know that there's like tons and tons of videos on tutorials like this, but I want to show you guys how I get myself into orbit around Kerbin because I know that there's different play styles in this game, and showing you guys exactly what kind of spacecraft that I build in order to get into orbit around Kerbin. And we'll be going over exactly what numbers are important, thrust rate ratio, etc., etc. So let's just go ahead and dive right in and build our rocket as I explain everything. So we're going to start with our command pod here, and this is going to be a manned mission, and I'm going to be using some of the more basic parts here for our vessel, just that way it's more relevant to beginner players. And I am using a lot of mods, but I will put the mods down in the description down below. But also, I want to ask you guys if you could hit that subscribe button as well if you do enjoy this video, and hit that like button too, because that also lets me know that you guys enjoyed the video, and it helps the algorithm. And my next goal is 2,000 subscribers, so I'd really appreciate that if you did hit the subscribe button if you are new here. So I'm going to be using decoupler here because we're going to be going back into Kerbin's atmosphere and dropping wherever, whether it be on land or water, and we just want this here, so I'm going to use this decoupler here. And we do not want to forget the parachute here, the MK16, which is the very basic one here. And then once we have this staging here, we don't need any communication devices, we don't need any solar panels, because going into orbit around Kerbin doesn't really take that much power to do so. So it's going to be a very short mission, something that's very easy to do that I'll be able to show you guys. Pretty simple, because I know that through my experiences of playing Kerbal Space Program, and even streaming it as well, I know that there are some players that do have trouble going to the Mun, and even getting like a good stable orbit or having a smooth transition from the ground to orbit around Kerbin. Because I know it can take them a lot of time, especially for newer players, because this game does have a learning curve. Now, I don't have thousands of hours in this game, but I do have some experience with how this game works, and maybe not exactly how much Delta V I need, because I always over prepare, which is not bad, but you know, I want to be pretty efficient or show how you could be efficient in this game. So we're just going to use this little fuel tank here, and then I'm going to put an engine here, which is in the base game, the Terrier engine, just like this. And then I'm going to take another decoupler and attach it to the bottom of the engine, and then we can start our next stage. Now this rocket's not going to be big at all, because going into orbit around Kerbin doesn't take much Delta V compared to going to the Mun, compared to going to Mimus. Although Mimus is easier to get to, well, it takes more to travel to Mimus, but it's much easier to land and get back home than it is with the Mun, because the Mun has more gravity, etc., etc. But we're gonna just continue building this vessel here, and as you notice on the bottom right here, if you notice prior to that, my Delta V was 0, and now it's at 404 because of this top stage here. Now, it says m/s, which means meters per second, and that also could be you could use it interchangeably with Delta V. It just means how much fuel do I have to get to where I need to go. So far we have 404 meters per second worth of fuel, or 404 Delta V. And we're going to be increasing that as we build our rocket. And you need 2,225, or 2,000, yeah, somewhere between 2,200 to 2,300 in order for you to get into orbit around Kerbin. But we're going to be using a little bit more than that because of the vessel design that I have that's actually affordable in the career mode, and also something that can be used for probably even a flyby of the Mun as well. And we're going to be using, this is going to be the bottom stage, so it's only technically 3 stages, because I'm also going to be using the decoupler here, just like this. And I'm going to also attach these very same fuel tanks on the side. And you don't have to line them up perfectly, it's totally fine if they're not. and then I'm going to add a little bit of this extra fuel at the bottom. And then I'm going to use the same engine as I did before, which is the swivel engine. And it's called swivel because it has some gimbal, and gimbal means I'm able to use this to turn my vessel. And since we have this command pod here, it's actually going to be very easy to control the vessel anyway, because we're going to have a pilot with it, and that's going to be Jebediah Kerbin. And yeah, but if you make bigger vessels, you are going to have to potentially use command and control devices, but that's going to be probably for another tutorial video or some video where I decide to go to a far off planet in the Kerbal system eventually. So then the next thing I'm going to use is this external fuel duct. Now you don't have to use this if you do not want to, because we already have enough delta V as is as this vessel is constructed, because the way that we have it right now is that these two go off, then these two decouple after they're out of fuel, the middle one goes next, then once that runs out of fuel we decouple from here, and then this is the final bit that will get us into orbit if we're not already there with this second stage. But I'm going to go a step further, and I'm going to use an external fuel duct, and this will divert fuel from the vessel, or from these fuel tanks on either side, to the middle. And it didn't really change. It actually decreased our delta V a little bit, but I just want to do this because I'm going to have all three of these go at the same time. So I'm going to move that engine to the bottom one here. And again, it doesn't change much, but it does increase what is called our TWR, and that's 2.22. Now, TWR is an abbreviation meaning thrust to weight ratio, and thrust to weight ratio is how much thrust you have compared to the weight of your vessel. And if it's above 1, that means you are going to be lifting off from the ground. And as you can see, we have more than twice the amount of thrust compared to the weight, which is too fast. So what we're going to do is I'm going to right click this swivel engine, and I'm going to bring down the thrust a little bit, down to 74, and that is the same here because it is symmetrical. In the middle here, we're also going to go down to 74. And as you can see, it went down to 1.65. So when I have the engine going at full blast, it actually won't be, because the thrust has been brought down manually. And that'll actually be more efficient over time, because as we go higher in the atmosphere, the more delta V we're going to gain, because the thinner the atmosphere will be. Just like in real life. The higher you go in the atmosphere, the thinner it is. And the more thrust you're going to have, or the more delta V you're going to be able to get from that. And I've already named this craft Simple Craft 1 because it is pretty simple. And again, you don't need this fuel duct, but the way that I have this staged, this is probably a great way to do it. So without further ado, let's go ahead and just launch this thing and see if we can get to orbit with it, which I'm pretty sure we will. Alright, so here we are. We are on the launch pad, and I have my stabilizers here to hold this up in place. And I'm going to use, so I could use X to bring down my thrust. I could press Z to bring the thrust all the way up for full blast. And I'm going to use what is called, what's down here, the maneuver node. And this will bring this panel up here. Now this panel is apoapsis and periapsis, and this will tell me exactly how much height I have. Right now, we're technically supposed to be 0, 0, but that's okay. These numbers will change as we go, and we want to be, and this is in meters, so we want to be above, we want 70 kilometers or 70,000 meters, and that is the height of Kerbin's atmosphere. But we can't get there unless we actually, start the vessel, so you also want to double check the right side or the left side here where all these stages are, because you might have there might be staging issues sometimes based on how you put parts together, and you just want to double check to make sure that they go in the order that they are going to decouple from each other. And usually if you build it from top to bottom, everything should work out fine. But without further ado, let's go ahead and launch this thing. 3, 2, 1, go. There we go. And I'm going to bring the thrust down a little bit more. Even though I brought this down manually, I still feel like it is a little too much still. Now, you're probably wondering, well, when am I going to turn my vessel? So when I do this, I wait till I'm around 100 meters per second, and then I start to turn. And you also want to make sure that SAS is turned on because that is what helps us stay stabilized. If it's off, we can manually do it, but it becomes harder because our vessel might wobble. And you can see that the fuel from these two tanks is going down faster because they are being put into the middle tank that is also going at the same time. So all this fuel is being put into there. And you don't want to turn all the way to the right. You want to make sure that you I'm going to slow down even more, way more, because we are going super fast. But you just want to slowly tip. Slowly tip. And make sure you keep an eye on your numbers on the bottom left for your apoapsis, because once you reach 70 kilometers, then you are at Kerbin's atmosphere or above it if it's above 70,000 meters. Alright, so we are almost there until we can decouple. And there we go. Those are out. Then we decouple those. And now we're just left with this second stage. And we also have this top stage as well. And I'm going to bring up our thrust because we're well above the atmosphere now. As you can see, we won't have as much resistance. However, we are still within quite a bit of thickness of this atmosphere, despite how high it looks. Looks can be deceiving. They really can be, so you just want to make sure. But I'm still keeping an eye on my apoapsis here, and I'm trying to get more horizontal speed than vertical speed because I want to make sure that my delta V is getting above 2,000. Now, you don't have to get it right away, even if you reach that 70 kilometer mark, because you can still get that when you reach the top of apoapsis. So there we go. We reached 70 kilometers. And I'm actually going to bring this up a lot more because the higher you are, the slower you will be at the very top. And I want to make sure that I want to reach 100,000 meters or 100 kilometers because it'll just be easier for us to get into orbit around Kerbin. So just a little bit above 100,000. And you could keep burning if you want to, but I'm actually going to I'm going to coast along. And I can speed up time a little bit to ensure that we're actually out of the atmosphere now. And there we go. We are now out of the atmosphere. Now we made this achievement. Now the next achievement is actually getting to orbit. So if I hit M, I can see here that you can see this blue line. My apoapsis is up here, which is 104,066 meters. So that is the highest point, and we are in sub-orbit, which means, well, we're not in orbit, but we are in space. Now, we need to get into an actual orbit. So I'm going to wait till I'm at the very top here, and I could use a maneuver if I want to, but I typically like to eyeball this, and it's super easy to eyeball going into orbit. Just as long as you have your nav ball up, and you pay attention to this yellow circle here, which you could use for prograde, but if you are in the beginning of career mode, you might not have that right away, so you'll just have to eyeball this anyway. And once you're at apoapsis, you want to be right smack dab in the middle here, because that'll be the most efficient way of you getting into orbit is by being on this line here once we reach apoapsis. And I'm just going to speed up time a little bit, and we can speed up time even faster, but it's not really worth doing that. So once we're there, and we want to do it a little bit before, and I'm just going to make sure that my engine is on full blast, and we just want to skirt along. And my periapsis, which is the lowest point, is decreasing decreasing really fast, and then boom! Look at that! 108 kilometers, 88 0.8 kilometers. We made it! We're in orbit! Look at that! And you can see the periapsis and apoapsis. And like I said, the apoapsis is the highest point, periapsis is the lowest point. And our apoapsis moved because the new highest point is going to occur because we can't really have a high periapsis. It cannot be higher than the apoapsis. It's just how it works. But we did it. We're in orbit. And we have plenty of fuel left over. We actually have a lot because we actually have 1,639 meters per second. So I didn't even need this top stage here. But like I always tell myself, and I also tell you guys, viewers of this video, I always want to, you could say over prepare. You always say, I don't really need that much, and I might be overthinking exactly how much I need and everything, which could be the case, but I think it's better this way than if I were to come without it, because then we could get into a position where I'd have to revert the mission, or I'd have to go back to the vehicle assembly building, and I'd have to rebuild the vessel or make it so the vessel actually has enough delta V, blah blah blah. But look how beautiful this is. Look how beautiful that is. We got the sun right here. We got beautiful Kerbin. We're actually going to be heading to the dark side of it, or the nighttime side, which is fine. We could just speed up time there and go around. We could just go around here until we make it back on the other side, because we want to come down. We don't want to stay up here the whole time, because we are eventually going to be running out of power, but it's not going to be for quite some time, as long as we don't keep moving and use our maneuver nodes here. But we're actually going to go retrograde, which is the opposite of prograde, meaning that we're going to slow ourselves down. And we want to slow ourselves down below... we want to put ourselves below 70 kilometers, because that puts us back in the atmosphere, and then we'll just start getting air resistance from the atmosphere, make it so that our periapsis is going to continue to drop, and then we're going to be able to eventually land wherever. It could be in the water, could be on the land, mountains, desert. There are ways that you could probably plan on landing somewhere, but it doesn't really matter to me. Like, as long as I land and I don't explode, that's fine to me. So I'm gonna face retrograde. I'm just gonna burn, and yeah, that brought down my periapsis quite low. And I could probably just use up the rest of the fuel here. And this junk here, the space junk, it's not gonna be space junk anymore, because that's gonna burn up in the atmosphere. And we have this last bit here, but there's no real reason for me to keep this, because I over-prepared, but I can go ahead and detach that as well. And then all we have left is our command pod, and this is what we need. We just need this to land. And I could have kept that attached, the final stage, but it would make us probably too heavy, and we don't want that. We don't want that. We want to slow down to a certain speed, because if we go too fast, then we'll crash. We could either crash into the water too fast, or even onto the land too fast. But you could see how we're gonna slowly drift into the atmosphere, and I'm just gonna speed up time, and it'll automatically stop the it'll eventually stop your warp speed that you have here once you reach the atmosphere, because you can only go so fast with warp speed, or warp time speed, however you want to call it. It only goes so fast depending on how high you are in the atmosphere. Now, as you can see, since our speed is still really high, we're still above 2,000 meters per second, our vessel is going to start burning out in the atmosphere, because when things move fast through a thick atmosphere, things heat up. But with this heat that's going to happen, even though we're heating up, we are also slowing down. And the more we're in the atmosphere, so we're in this part here, we're just barely, we're I guess you could consider well in the atmosphere, but this is a very thin part of it. But once we're around here, around up here in this atmosphere meter, then we're going to be significantly slowing down. And we'll have a lot of air resistance here because of this flat surface and because we're facing retrograde. Now, this looks like it's overheating, which it may, but we're going too slow for it to actually be a concern. And we could have a heat shield under this as well to ensure that we are safe and sound and no heating up happens at all. Now, a place that we want to really consider putting a heat shield on is if we go to Eve or if we go to Joule. Those are places that are definitely a concern for heating up too fast. Too fast. So I'm going to speed up time as we're burning up because eventually, as you can see, our speed is significantly slowing down, but it's not safe enough for our parachute to actually be ejected out or propelled as our vessel until now, because the parachute needs to be coming out at a specific speed, because if it goes too fast, then the parachute will be destroyed. And it won't automatically deploy. So let's say I hit space to deploy it because that's how you change the stages on keyboard. It won't actually deploy. That's the word I'm looking for. Deploy. No, I said like eject or something. It won't deploy until it's actually within a safe speed. So, but we're going into the clouds. Look at that. So pretty. I love this visual mod. As I said before, the mods will be in the description of this video down below. And oh, it looks like there's fog over there too. And I think we're landing in, is it a desert or plains? But yeah, the parachute eventually opens up all the way, and our surface speed is really slow. Oh yeah, we landed in the desert. Look at that. That's cool. You can see the shadows of the clouds moving by. Really, really pretty. Beautiful. Look at that. And touchdown. We made it. And if we just EVA, we could just walk around if we want to. Maybe even take a surface sample. What does it say? Lots of sand and rocks here. You're thankful that you've been in a climate-controlled environment because it sure looks hot out there. The sand is dry and loose, and it looks like it's going to take some effort to clean your gear afterwards. That is true. Don't want to get sand in your boots or anything, because sand gets everywhere. It's crazy. It is crazy up in here. What is... Hello? Oh, there we go. I have a mod where you can EVA and, like, vessels and stuff. There's a mod for that as well, and it's really cool, but it gets confusing with the pods, and because you gotta unbuckle and buckle, it's confusing. But yeah, I think that's gonna be it for this tutorial video. I hope you guys did learn something from this, and if you do plan on playing Kerbal Space Program, either as a veteran or even as a beginner player or somewhere in between like me where only having like probably a few hundred hours, I do hope that, this may have helped you a little bit, or, you enjoyed watching a different perspective on how somebody else went to orbit compared to how you do or how others do based on what who you watched on YouTube or wherever you watch them. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I've been Savvy. I'd like to give a shout out, actually, before we go, I'd like to give a shout out to my friends Bear Medley and Donkeys for Sale for being members of the channel, and you could become a member too by hitting the join button down below. I've been Savvy, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye guys, see you later.